The camera off approach.
So, hi everyone. Welcome to another session on drawing fundamentals. So, my name is Manish, and so today we are going to continue with the drawing fundamentals. And I hope you are ready with the paper and pencil. And today we're going to learn a very important concept, which is perhaps one of the most difficult thing to master. But it is very, very essential for drawing. Okay. So before we move ahead, so I'll just explain few concepts regarding today's topic, and then we'll move on to the demo session. And so जैसे मैंने पिछले सेशन में बताया था कि हम जो भी ड्राइंग शुरू करते हैं, so we have to start with a warm-up exercise. In the first session with me, I showed there are 3 basic exercises. So we'll do just for that warm-up exercise just for 5 minutes. Okay, so I'll do it along with you as well. So please get your sheets and pencils ready. And जो बस मैंने जो एक्सरसाइज पहले सेशन में बताया था, उसको बस आपको वही चीज़ करना है. हम एक वार्म अप एक्सरसाइज करेंगे. Okay, so I have to take my pencil and we'll start with the lines. So horizontal lines, जो जैसे मैंने पिछली बार बताया था. So drawing from your shoulder, if you remember. So not worrying about whether your line is straight or not, but just getting that flow. Okay, इसमें आप थोड़ा ओरिएंटेशन चेंज कर सकते हैं. And then we'll do the vertical lines. Just quick sketching, quick sketching. Don't have to take too much time. Just few seconds. आप बस draw करते रहो बस. Okay, so same page. Then we'll do diagonal lines as I showed last time. So again, the opposite side. Okay, so one page of lines. Okay, ठीक है हो गया. Then we'll switch over to the left hand, as I mentioned last time. We turn over the page and we'll just draw some random lines. So I'm not worrying about the orientation. Just, as I mentioned in the previous session, कि मैंने बताया था कि you have to, train that you have to you have to open your both side of a brain. Okay. Okay. So one page of this. So and then we'll do the next exercise is the circles one. So again, same thing, starting with your main hand. So draw clockwise, anti-clockwise, whichever suits you. Okay, so switch over to the other hand. Just draw some random overlapping circles. Okay, do not worry about the quality of circle. Just keep drawing it. Okay. So I'll quickly move on to the last exercise in this. So the curves. So I showed you the similar kind of curves which I did last time in the first session as well. Okay, so switching over to the other hand. All right. So just draw any shape. Just don't think about what shape to draw. Whatever comes to your mind, just draw it. हम जस्ट अपने हैंड को वार्म अप कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, बिफोर यू एक्चुअली स्केचिंग. जैसे मैंने पहले सेशन में बताया था कि यू हैव टू डू दिस एक्सरसाइज फॉर 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, so you have warmed enough, and then we'll move on to the main topic. So today's topic is very interesting and also one of the most difficult tasks to actually master, but it is very essential, especially for people who want to pursue uh, industrial design, product design, or transportation design. So this is one of the shape which is the most uh, difficult one to actually, like master. So it is very, very important that one should be able to, like have some command over it. Otherwise, what will happen is that, like, most likely you're going to because this shape which I'm going to talk about today, it is going to be very, very, like difficult to actually to maybe like sketch or something, or it is like a lot of people in my experience, even I have gone through that, कि हमने उसको बहुत ज़्यादा इसको बहुत struggle किया है इसको actually सीखने के लिए ये चीज़ को. I try to become an expertise in it. Okay, so the today's shape. So what we're going to talk about is, so I have made some notes. There's a visual notes. So I'll share it with you, and मैं उसको आपको डेमो करके भी बताऊंगा. Okay. So today's topic is ellipses, and we're going to talking about, so what is an ellipse, how you draw an ellipse, and ये ellipse कहाँ पर applicable होते हैं, और इससे आप क्या क्या आप draw कर सकते हो. So this is very important. Okay. So now ellipse basically like just let me ask you a question. Like you can reply it in chat. Does anyone know what is an ellipse, or what do you call an ellipse? So you can write your replies on your in the chat. So whatever you know about it. So does anyone know what is an ellipse? Okay, so no one has answered as yet. Okay, so what are you going to do? So I'm going to give you an anatomy of ellipse. So first to understand ellipse, first we need to understand circle. Okay. तो सर्कल बेसिकली हमने बेसिक मैथ्स में हमने पढ़ा है कि इट इज अ 360 डिग्री, इसमें टोटल एंगल जो 360 डिग्री होता है, एंड इट इज अ कर्व. Okay. Now, when we see a perfect circle, so basically we are looking in a draft view. That means our line of sight is perpendicular to the surface of the circle. Then we see this as a perfect circle. The moment I start, like rotating this circle, whether horizontally or vertically around this axis, a z axis, or around or along x axis, this will start, this dimension will start decreasing. It will start squeezing. So when it starts squeezing, that is an illusion. वो reality में squeeze नहीं होता या वो कम नहीं होता है. Basically क्या होता है कि जब हम इसको rotate करते हैं, तो हमारा जो angle है, ये जो perpendicular angle है, it is no longer 90 degree. It would be like less than 90 degree or more than 90 degree. Okay. Now, at a point when we start rotating, let's say we rotate like this. So this is the axis, and we start rotating the curve along this axis. So what's going to happen is that at one point of time, this circumference or this perimeter of the circle will appear as a line. वो एक line की तरह दिखेगा. वो कब होगा? जब हमारा जो rotation जब ये 0 degree पे पहुंच जाएगा. So this will appear as a line. So this circle will appear as a line. Okay. So yes, right. Yes, Snehashi said that circle at an angle is absolutely correct. So when we look circle at an angle, so we get a ellipse. So you see here that this is a like a squeezed version of this circle, where we are looking the circle at an angle, and how much that angle actually squeezes depends upon like at what angle we are seeing that circle at. हम किस एंगल पे देख रहे हैं वो उस पर डिपेंड करता है, तो ये एलिप्स कितना थिन या कितना फैट होगा. ओके. सो दिस इज अ बेसिक कॉन्सेप्ट इन एलिप्स. नाउ जब इसमें दो चीजें आपको ध्यान रखने की जरूरत होती है. सो when we divide, as we see here, this two axes where they're meeting in the center, so vertical axis and horizontal axis. So these are called, in ellipse, they are called major axis and a minor axis. तो मेजर एक्सिस जो होता है, इट डिवाइड्स द एलिप्स along the longest dimension. So ये हमारा longest dimension is, that is called major axis. And minor axis divides the ellipse in equal proportion in both the cases along the narrowest dimension. So this is your minor axis. And one thing to remember, in order to make a correct ellipse or draw a correct ellipse, you have to make sure that the angle between minor axis and major axis is always going to be 90 degree. ये हमेशा 90 डिग्री होगा, ना लेस ना मोर, ना कम या ज्यादा. तो you have to make sure that this angle between minor axis and major axis has to be 90 degree. Okay, this is very, very important. The reason when we are able to see, like we are able to figure out whether circle is of correct, or ellipse is of correct degree or not, then this is like, you can easily make out कि whether the angle between the major and minor axis is 90 degree or not. अगर वो slightly थोड़ा सा off होगा तो आपका ellipse भी आपका वो गलत बनेगा वो चीज को. ठीक है. So this is the basic concept of ellipse. Now we will move on to the second thing about ellipse. So here I'm going to talk about the degrees. So basically, at angle what we see at circle, जिस एंगल हम सर्कल को देखते हैं उसको डिग्री कहते हैं, उस एलिप्स की डिग्री को कहते हैं. यू मस्ट हैव सीन एलिप्स टेम्पलेट ऑफ डिफरेंट डिग्रीज लाइक 30 डिग्री, 15, 60 degree, maybe like 75, and so on and so forth. So these are the ellipse mostly used in drawing. So you find all these templates actually पूरा एक set रहता है, लेकिन these are the most used ellipse. तो ये जो डिग्री जो होता है basically, so here I have drawn some small illustration. Then I'll talk about this. First, we need to understand this. Okay. Now here, so there's a person here standing, and he's looking at a bunch of circles lying on the floor. So this is the top view of the same circles. और यहाँ पर वो person खड़ा है. अब यहाँ पर अगर देखोगे कि right, the circle which is right under his feet, so his angle जहाँ पर उसको perfect circle दिखेगा वो 90 degree है, just below his feet. Okay, so as I showed here, that when your line of sight is 90 degrees to the circle, that it will appear as a perfect circle. Okay. Now, as you move further away from the viewer, you see these circles have they're appearing at, they're having certain angles. यहाँ ज्यादा है, यहाँ कम है. तो ये जो डिग्री है, जिस डिग्री पे हम देख रहे हैं सर्कल को, जिस एंगल पे देख रहे हैं, so that is a ellipse degree. So that can range from 90 to 0, 0 as I mentioned that it will appear as a line. So between 0 to 90, जो भी जो डिग्री जो है उस पे वो हमें जो सर्कल जो दिख रहा है वही उसका एलिप्स का डिग्री होता है. Okay. Now drawing ellipse is quite technical, so we'll not talk about a technical part here that much. It's all about how drawing a freehand ellipse. So that is what matters. Okay. Now coming to here, so same concept. So when you're looking ellipse in one point perspective, हम एक circle को जब हम one point perspective में देखते हैं, so what happens is this. इसमें एक बहुत की थिंग है, जब आप एलिप्स ड्रॉ करते हो ना, ये चीज बहुत ध्यान देना बहुत जरूरी है. नाउ इफ आई ड्रॉ, अगर आप ये सर्कल को देखोगे, यही एक इलस्ट्रेशन में कर लेता हूँ. लेट्स यूज दिस वन. नाउ हियर वी नो दैट in order to get a perfect circle, we can use a square to draw this. And midpoint of each side of square is tangent to the circle. And just you have to draw a circle which touches at this midpoint of this side. तो हमें एक perfect circle मिल जाएगा. हमें एक basic geometry हमने मैथ्स में स्कूल में पढ़ा है ये चीज को. ठीक है. और ये exact center है इसका, जिससे ये दोनों vertical और horizontal axis पास हो रहा है. अब यही चीज जब हम पर्सपेक्टिव में करते हैं, this center, so this center here in this case is slightly off center है वो. Okay, so just let me highlight with a pen. तो ये जो सेंटर है slightly off है. It is not exactly in the center as it is in this case. Why? Because of the perspective, because these lines are converging towards a vanishing point. So what happens is that your central axis also starts shifting towards that vanishing point. ये सिर्फ एलिप्स में नहीं है, आप कुछ भी ड्रॉ करते हो पर्सपेक्टिव में, द सेंट्रल जो किसी भी ऑब्जेक्ट का, ऑर्गेनिक ऑब्जेक्ट का जो सेंटर होता है, हमेशा पर्सपेक्टिव याद रखना, इट मूव्स टुवर्ड्स द वैनिशिंग पॉइंट. सो व्हाट हैपेंस इज दैट, सो दिस डायमेंशन विच इज नियर, हम इस साइड से देख रहे हैं, वी आर लुकिंग फ्रॉम दिस साइड टुवर्ड्स दिस वैनिशिंग पॉइंट हियर. सो हियर इज आवर वैनिशिंग पॉइंट. When you're looking towards this side, so the dimension or the object which is near to the viewer, will appear large. So it's an illusion. And in order to draw something in perspective, you need to be mindful of it. So you cannot have the drawing or the center of any object exactly as in draft view. तो आप पर्सपेक्टिव में सिर्फ ऐसे बिल्कुल सेंटर में आएगा, वो आप पर्सपेक्टिव में ड्रॉ नहीं कर सकते. दैट विल बी इनकरेक्ट. ओके, सो दिस डायमेंशन विल बी लार्जर बिकॉज इट इज नियर टू अस. और क्योंकि यहाँ आपका जो आपका सेंट्रल लाइन है शिफ्ट हो रहा है पीछे की तरफ में, तो ये जो डायमेंशन है ये छोटा अपीयर होगा. एंड एज वी मूव टूवर्ड्स द वैनिशिंग पॉइंट, यू सी दैट each ellipse starts getting smaller and smaller to the point where it appear as a dot. तो हर एक केस में वो जो सेंट्रल लाइन है पीछे की तरफ पुश होता रहेगा वो चीज को. So whether you draw horizontal ellipse or whether you draw vertical ellipse. So in vertical ellipse also, so I'll show you a demo. So let's draw a circle ellipse. So let's draw it in one point perspective, but our vanishing point is not on the center, but it's somewhere here. Okay, so let's make this. So again, we find the midpoint of it. We connect to opposite diagonals. This we have studied in basic maths and basic geometry. हम आपको एक मिड पॉइंट मिल गया हमें। अब ये मिड पॉइंट भी, तो हमारी ये जो लाइंस है ये वैनिशिंग पॉइंट की तरफ जा रही है। ओके, सो थ्रू दिस line, through this midpoint, we also we draw a line which is going towards the vanishing point. Okay, now we'll draw this an ellipse. So let's draw this vertical line. So it needs to touch all these midpoints. Okay. So we'll try to draw an ellipse. Okay. Now, if I need to make another ellipse going towards this direction, so I need to have this dimension. ये square का जो dimension है, ये जो dimension है, this also needs to be exact in proportion. Okay. So how do we make that? So what we do is that from either of this corner or this corner, we take a line which passes through this midpoint. Okay. So let's draw from this corner to this, passing through this point, so that it will be near to draw. So we'll draw a vertical line which should be parallel to this one. तो बेसिकली मैंने क्या किया है कि पर्सपेक्टिव में इस डायमेंशन को यहाँ इसको डुप्लीकेट किया है. Now if you see this dimension and this dimension here, ये थोड़ा बड़ा, ये थोड़ा छोटा है. जैसे मैंने अभी थोड़ी देर पहले कहा था, जो चीज हमारे नजदीक होती है वो ज्यादा बड़ा दिखता है. एंड एज यू स्टार्ट मूविंग टुवर्ड्स द वैनिशिंग पॉइंट, दे स्टार्ट फोर शॉर्टनिंग. इस जो ये छोटा हो जा रहा है ना, इसको एक ड्राइंग टर्म्स में फोर शॉर्टनिंग बोलते हैं उसको. सो अगेन फाइंडिंग द मिड पॉइंट. We'll draw an ellipse. Now, if you see that this ellipse is thinner than this one, और इसका जो सेंटर है वो थोड़ा और शिफ्ट हो रहा है. Again, we duplicate. So here at this moment, I'll just guess कि कितना वो छोटा होता जाएगा. Okay, so here at what increment is decreasing, that is not important. The main thing is that you understand that in order to draw correct ellipse, तो always में हम ellipse की बात कर रहे हैं तो हमेशा वो perspective में होगा. Okay, so it is very, very important. Okay, so as I mentioned in the beginning, that it is perhaps one of the most difficult shape to draw freehand. But if you understand this concept, so like you can easily practice using construction method. मैं advise करूंगा कि आप construction method use करो शुरू में. जैसे मैंने यहाँ दिखाया कि मैंने एक box बनाया है. ये perspective में box है. Finding the midpoint, just connecting those midpoint. I'm not not worrying about whether my ellipse is drawn correctly or not. Here is thing कि आपको जो concept to draw the ellipse है, that should be followed. If you remember in the first session, I said that it is more about the process than the final result. If you follow the process, वो धीरे धीरे practice करते करते वो आपका result आ ही जाएगा. But provided you keep practicing it. Okay. Now, before we move further, before we move to some drawing part, so I'll show you something that, okay, how does this apply to things which you draw? Okay. So I think I showed this sketch in previous session as well. So here this drawing, in here if you see, especially I'll talk about this sketch, this one in the center. Now, one thing just before I explain more about it, one thing I would like to add here. Another thing to remember is that, so just let me highlight. So as I said major axis is your divides the ellipse along the longest dimension, and minor axis divides in the narrowest dimension. So in this case, in ellipse, one thing to remember, to make sure that your ellipse is correctly drawn, there's one thing to remember. Always observe that. अगर आपने वो चीज ड्रॉ कर दिया, आपका एलिप्स कभी गलत नहीं बनेगा। तो हमारा जो माइनर एक्सिस जो होता है, ये हमेशा एक वैनिशिंग पॉइंट की तरफ जाता है। सो दिस माइनर एक्सिस ऑफ एन एलिप्स always converges to a vanishing point. Now this you'll see in this sketch. So here, this is my major axis, and this one, this line, is my minor axis. And other thing, one more thing, specifically in 1 point perspective, your major axis will always be parallel to the horizon line. This is only for 1 point perspective. Always remember, in 1 point perspective, your major axis will always be parallel to the horizon line. That's how you know that you're drawing in 1 point perspective. And this is not only applicable to ellipse, but also if you draw a cube, if you draw a cylinder, or if you draw anything in 1 point perspective, your horizontal lines, they're always parallel. The moment you start rotating towards left or right, it will become 2 point perspective. Okay. So here, if you see, here the minor axis is common across all the ellipse. इसमें भी इसी के थ्रू होके जा रहा है वो. So if I extend, so this is a minor axis of this ellipse, this is minor axis of this ellipse, and this is minor axis of this ellipse. If you see, they're all going towards this vanishing point. Okay. Here, in this case, because this is a 2 point perspective, now this is 3D. So in this case, so your minor axis is going towards vanishing point. So because it's in 3D, so ये आपका ये minor axis 3D में हो जाएगा. So this is going towards vanishing point. So this is my minor axis. Okay. So always remember in 2 point perspective. So again, for this, that you remember that my major and minor axis need to have 90° between them. So here, this will not be the vertical line here. If I to draw the major axis, ये होगा. So in 3D, this will be 90°. So this is a major difference between drawing in 2 point perspective and drawing in 1 point perspective. Here you don't have to worry about that much in about, where the minor axis and major axis will be. The problem comes when you draw in 2 point perspective. That is what happens. Okay. So this is the basic concepts which you need to understand. Now, seeing the application of this, if you see here, so I'll focus on this sketch, the central one. So I had shown this in the first session as well. Now, if you see here, ये मेरा जो axis है, which is passing through this center, this is going towards this right vanishing point. ये मेरे 2 point perspective में है, जो मैंने draw किया है. Now everything, so here, this is also an ellipse. अगर मैं body की बात करूं, ये earbud part वाला मैं करूं, तो आप देख रहे हैं ellipse ही है वो. Everything is ellipse. Here also is an ellipse. So as in this case where the minor axis is common and they're going towards the vanishing point, same here in this case, if you see the minor axis is passing through the center of each ellipse. तो आप जब प्रोडक्ट ड्रॉ करते हो जिसमें राउंड शेप है या सर्कुलर शेप है, अगर जब उसको आप पर्सपेक्टिव में ड्रॉ करोगे, तो you have to make sure that everything is aligned to it. The degree of ellipse that comes with, we'll say intuitive sketching बोलते हैं, आपको थोड़ा सा वो guess करना पड़ेगा. Okay, so that takes time. Okay, so don't worry about it. That even though ellipse is not drawn of a correct degree, लेकिन अगर आप बाकी concepts अगर आप follow कर रहे हैं, वो चीज important है. Okay, so Now we'll move on to the drawing part. So how do we use this ellipse to draw certain objects? Okay. Now I had done, मैंने कुछ drawings बनाई हैं. So where I've used ellipse to draw this different shapes. So this is a bottle, so another bottle kind of thing, then another shape, so another kind of shape, so all using ellipse. Agar, if you can see, so you see this light drawing. So this light drawing I've done with this marker. Okay, just to as a reference guidelines. Okay, and over there, then I have, because I want to see, the reason being that why I'm using this marker is this to draw. You need not buy this marker. आप pencil से भी light draw कर सकते हो. Then we have, once you are sure that your ellipse is of correct degree, then you can start, with pencil you can correct it. अब जैसे यहाँ पर देखो, the first drawing में यहाँ पर मेरा जो मेथड था, मैं इसको रीड्रॉ करके बताता हूँ. So what I did was, so first I thought, because this is in like a 1 point perspective, because we can see this top surface, top cap, तो हमें पता है ये हमारा जो माइनर एक्सिस है ये है. तो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है कि आपको पता होना चाहिए आपका माइनर एक्सिस कौन सा, मेजर एक्सिस कौन सा है. अभी मैंने थोड़ी देर पहले बताया कि मेजर एक्सिस 1 point पर्सपेक्टिव में इज ऑलवेज पैरेलल टू द हॉराइजन लाइन. तो यहाँ पर हमारा जो मेजर एक्सिस है ये रहा, इस एलिप्स का, इस एलिप्स का, इस एलिप्स का. So this is parallel to the horizon line. And this is my minor axis going towards that vanishing point. Okay. So my approach here was that first I need to define my major and minor axis. So what I'm going to do is, so using this marker, I'm going to define my major and minor axis in 1 point perspective. Okay. So I'll just rotate the sheet so that it is a better orientation for me to draw. Okay. So I'm drawing a bit dark so you can see it. So this is my minor axis. And let's define this ground plane. Okay, so this is my ground plane जिस पे ये बॉटल रखा हुआ है. अब यही चीज को अब मुझे ड्रॉ करना है. ठीक है, तो अब मुझे एलिप्स ड्रॉ करने में मुझे पता है कि आई हैव द माइनर एक्सिस. अब मुझे मेजर एक्सिस चाहिए. अब यहाँ पर आप ये चीज गौर करो कि यहाँ पर जितने भी जो एलिप्स है देयर आर डिफरेंट डिग्रीज. ये थोड़ा पतला है, ये थोड़ा ज्यादा मोटा है, और ये और ज्यादा मोटा है. So this is something that I am like, this is intuitive. This is not something that I've taken some measuring tool to actually draw correctly. If you see that, अगर आप यहाँ देख रहे हो थोड़ा सा इनकरेक्ट ड्रॉ हुआ था क्योंकि अलाइन नहीं था, सेंटर में नहीं था, और ये 1 point पर्सपेक्टिव है, तो आई हैव टू मेक श्योर दैट कोई सिमेट्री मेंटेन्ड हो. तो आई हैव टू बी वेरी केयरफुल व्हेन आई एम चूजिंग डिग्री ऑफ द सर्कल. ओके, सो लेट्स से द टॉप कैप. अभी बस मैं गाइडलाइंस बना रहा हूँ. दिस इज नॉट माय फाइनल ड्राइंग. व्हेन आई मेक द फाइनल ड्राइंग, then I'll make the corrections. Okay, so first I'll make this cap. So this ellipse के लिए ये इसका मेजर एक्सिस हो गया. फिर नीचे वाला जो एलिप्स है इसका भी मेजर एक्सिस बनाना है. तो आई हैव टू मेक श्योर दैट आई हैव दिस थिकनेस. तो आई हैव टू गेस वेयर टू ड्रॉ. ओके, सो वी हैव वन हियर. तो मेरा कैप का हो गया. अब मुझे ये नेक के लिए चाहिए. नेक के लिए तो नेक थोड़ा सा थिन है, तो आई हैव टू मेक श्योर दैट, so what I'll do is I'll just define the thickness of the neck. I'm just, okay, so let's make like this. Okay, then next here the bottle starts taking shape. So this is a bigger circle. Okay, so here the circle is touching tangent here, so I need to have this major axis bit below. और थोड़े ज़्यादा लंबे डायमेंशन का है ये. Okay, so first we'll make the construction. Okay, so here is the base. So this part where the curvature of the bottle is happening, so I need to have this ellipse major axis somewhere just above this. So let's have it here. Okay, मैंने अपने लिए एक गाइडलाइंस बना लिया मैंने. Now here, now I'll make the final part. So first I need to maintain symmetry. जब कभी आप वन पॉइंट पर्सपेक्टिव में बनाते हो, तो what you can do is you can take measurement or you can like use a reference kind of thing. Okay, so let's say, तो पहले वाला टॉप वाला जो कैप है इसको हम बना लेते हैं. Okay, so let me see that I want the length. So this length जो है of the cap. So I want it somewhere like I want like accurate representation. So what I'm going to do is, so I'm going to define one part कि कितना length होना चाहिए. ठीक है, so let's say I want to have this. So this dimension. So this is one half. Okay, so this is one half of the symmetry. Now what I'll do is that I'll take the pencil and I'll keep my thumb somewhere where the nib of the pen or of the pencil starts and ends. So it ends here, and I'll just shift towards the right side. So I'll just guess. Doesn't have to be super accurate. So I've just measured this same distance here. So I'll just complete this. Okay. So I've got the cap portion. Now I'll come to the neck. So neck more looks a bit fat. I'll make it a bit thin. तो मैं थोड़ा सा और अंदर स्केच कर लेता हूँ. अगेन यू कैन डू लाइक ऐसा भी कर सकते हो या पेंसिल भी कर सकते हो. तो लेट मी टेक दिस मेजरमेंट. ओके, दिस इज दिस हियर. ओके, सो कम्स हियर समवेयर. Okay, and because it has to touch tangent towards the ellipse, this ellipse, so let's define this thickness also. इस यहाँ नेक के नीचे जहाँ बॉडी है, तो think as like a shoulder. So I'll just say I'll take one dimension. Let's take this one, this dimension. So here, this because the dimension is bigger, I can use my fingers to just point to make a mark. So it comes somewhere here, somewhere approximately. So as I mentioned in the previous class, your eyes head should be over the sketch. Then you'll be able to see this. थोड़ा सा अंदर होगा, ठीक है, क्योंकि ये डायमेंशन यहाँ पर, ये जो रेडियस है ये कांस्टेंट है, दिस इज सेम. तो दिस विल फॉलो टुवर्ड्स द बेस. तो मुझे आई कैन जस्ट व्हाट आई कैन डू, आई जस्ट ड्रॉ स्ट्रेट लाइन फ्रॉम हियर. तो मेक श्योर दैट दिस लाइन इज पैरेलल टू दिस वन. So if you see, I'm drawing very lightly. Okay, right? Now मेजर मुझे एक बॉडी पोर्शन मुझे पता चल गया. I just need to make an ellipse. Okay, so ghost sketching, which I said in the first session, sorry. So same thing again. Take it very slowly, take it very slowly. Okay, so make sure that it touches tangent here and here. Okay, more or less, okay, looks okay. So now I need the base one, ये base वाला. ठीक है, so I know that it needs to be tangent here. Okay, so we can just go a little bit over. बेसिकली मुझे एक शेप मिल गया है, अब मुझे बस उसको रिफाइन करना है उसको. ठीक है, यहाँ वाले एलिप्स ले लेते हैं. तो दिस इज, so I'm using this as a major axis. And here tangent here, and just following the same curvature. Okay, मुझे नेक मिल गया. अब ये प्रोफाइल हम बना सकते हैं. सो ये जहाँ से ये tangent है, I'll just follow this ellipse. So just continue with the ellipse. थोड़ा सा माइनर करेक्शन बना लेते हैं. And just make it more fatter. थोड़ा सा एक अच्छा ellipse दिख रहा है. Okay, so here this, and we go to the base. यहाँ थोड़ा राउंड कर लेते हैं, जैसे यहाँ राउंड है, यहाँ भी राउंड कर लेते हैं, and we just connect it and just complete the base. Okay, so we do have like a bottle, and we let's refine it more. थोड़ा सा करेक्शन कर लेते हैं उसको, थोड़ा सा और अच्छी लाइन वेट डाल देते हैं. Okay, so I'll just turn the page. So just making some minor corrections. So now there we have it. Okay, so the base भी थोड़ा वो कर लेते हैं. So see, if you see that how we can combine ellipses to make a product. So this is applicable to mostly the round objects or the circular kind of electrical kind of object. तो बाकी चीज भी ऐसे ही ड्रॉ किया है. Okay, so you can come up with different shapes where ellipses can be used. So I'll draw one more, and let's make a. So this is vertical. Let's make a like a horizontal kind of thing. Okay. So again here I'll define the major axis. Sorry, minor axis. So this is going towards a vanishing point. Okay. So here in ellipses, you can ignore the major axis. Main is your minor axis that has to point to the vanishing point, as I mentioned. So let's make some shape just from our memory, nothing special or something design kind of thing. And we'll make a very like a basic shape kind of thing. Okay. So okay, we'll just make a very generic kind of shape. So I'm not worried about my ellipse. I know that ellipse is not drawn correctly, but I can always go back and refine it. So, but I have to make sure that your minor axis is aligned to the ellipse. Okay. So let's draw the major axis just for reference to just to guide me. Right. Okay. So, so first we'll work on towards the ellipse. So just let me sharpen a pencil a little bit. So you can see this clean lines. So, okay. So I'll just draw very lightly. Okay. So where do I want my line weight to be? So let's complete this circle, ellipse. Okay, so let's say that, and okay, a very simple shape, nothing very complex. Okay. And let's define here. Okay. So let's define the minor axis. So this is pretty much you can draw anything, right? Okay. The main thing is that you have to always, as I mentioned, that you always have to be wary of where is your minor axis. So all these things, so you can try out a vertical orientation, you can try out horizontal rotation, orientation kind of thing. So whatever, so just take take a object, take an object at your home, थोड़ा cylindrical type या spherical type जो भी है, आप उसको फिर इसी टेक्निक से आप उसको ड्रॉ कर सकते हैं उसको. Okay, so this is the one thing, that how we draw ellipses. Okay, and how we can combine different objects kind of thing. So I've done few more shapes. I'll just share it with you. Okay, so if you see here, okay, so again, so if you see one thing that you can use ellipses to make cylinder. Okay, so vertical and horizontal cylinder. Again, so you see the shape, some shape kind of thing. So you can make also cone, combination of different volumes. तो ये जब आप प्रैक्टिस करोगे तो यही आपको ऑब्जेक्ट ड्राइंग में आएगा. सो फॉर एग्जांपल this one, drawing of this, if you break it into simple volumes, it will be combination of cylinders and ellipses and other shapes as well. So this is how you play around with it. So the reason why I took a special session for regarding ellipses is because this is one of the difficult thing to draw. Okay. Now, so your task is that you have to draw 5 objects which are cylindrical in nature or spherical in nature, and you can draw from observation. आप ऐसे कोई 5 ऑब्जेक्ट्स आप अपने घर में ढूंढ सकते हो और उसको आप ड्रॉ कर सकते हो उसको, जो टेक्निक मैंने बताया. तो यू कैन ड्रॉ इन, सो आई वुड एडवाइज यू टू ड्रॉ इन 1 point perspective, you can draw in 2 point perspective. Okay, try in both perspective, तो you'll understand कि ओरिएंटेशन कैसे उसका चेंज होता है जब हम ड्रॉ करते हैं. Okay, now how does this apply to, this exercise applies to, or mastering this ellipse applies to in design. So where do we see this? Okay, so I'll share some so where do you see this? So this is like how professionals also use this. Okay, so this is a magazine called Auto and Design, and there's a particular thing. So I'll just share it with you. Spacing. Okay. Okay. So here, if you see, you say, I think we'll take another sketch, let's say, which is more appropriate. Okay. Yeah. So this one is much better. Okay. Now, if you see, so this is the side view of a car, Here in side view, but this is not actually a exact side view or draft view. This is actually a 1 point perspective. Okay. But that will ignore that for now. If you see this circle here, in this here, or the tires here, in this case, they're almost like a perfect circle. Right now, because a line of sight is 90 degrees to the surface. That's what we see as a perfect circle. Now we'll come to sketch below this. Now you see this car is in 2 point perspective. So you have this vanishing point going this side. Okay. So this is like a flat perspective actually. And if you draw this line, so this is going to the right vanishing point. Now in this case, your minor axis of this wheel, if you can guess where it is. Okay. So minor axis is basically here, is passing through this center of the wheel, both in the front and at the back. Okay. So as I mentioned, as I said, that your minor axis always goes to the vanishing point. So if you see this, that this vanishing point is going towards this minor axis going towards the vanishing point. Now, if you see, once it starts becoming perspective, because गाड़ी perspective में, तो wheels भी perspective में. अब देखो यहाँ पूरा ellipse हो गया वो. So here it is in side view, and it went towards into perspective, and it became an ellipse. So you see, now this ellipse is actually that gives a good stance. जिस तरह से गाड़ी खड़ी है, वो ellipse की वजह से वो stance बहुत बढ़िया दिख रहा है. अगर ये ellipse सही डिग्री का, ये सही पर्सपेक्टिव में ड्रॉ नहीं होगा, it will look awkward. And in car design, we always start sketching with wheels. जब हम sketching करते हैं, तो we always start with wheels. So that is why it is very important to to know how to draw ellipses correctly in perspective. It's not only limited to car design, but is also applied in industrial and product design as well. Okay, so again, if you see here, now this is the rear view of the car, and again you see here, again minor axis is here. Now, if you see, notice one thing. When I did this minor axis, it is the minor axis also being followed by these lines. The bonnet line here, air intake line, the roof line, they are also following the same perspective. तो आप जब भी जो ड्रॉ करते हो, तो एलिप्स का जो पर्सपेक्टिव, जो वैनिशिंग पॉइंट होता है, वो भी बाकी चीजों फॉलो करना चाहिए, तभी वो ओवरऑल सारा पर्सपेक्टिव में आएगा. Okay. Same here. Here is the minor axis of the rear wheel and the front wheel, but everything is following that perspective. That's why the stance looks that pleasing. Aesthetically, बहुत अच्छा दिखता है वो, दिख रहा है वो. So this is very, very important. That's why this ellipse, especially for car design, it is very, very important. Okay. So I hope you understood the concept behind it. And if you have any questions, so we can write in the chat. Okay, and I'll try to answer as many as them. Okay, are there any questions? So before we end the session, people who are in Zoom, who are through Zoom, students of Kaphal, so you just hang around after this session. Okay, and if you have you want to take any feedback on your work or something like that, and so I'll give you a feedback on that. Okay, so are there any questions? So in the chat, any questions? Okay, so no questions so far. Okay, so thank you very much for joining this session, and we'll meet in the next session, and we'll continue with the drawing fundamentals and more interesting things will come out, which will help you to improve your drawing. Okay. Okay, so we have one question that Mehak says that how to break objects down into shapes. Okay. Okay, so that's a very good question. So Mehak, so it's for everyone, not only for Mehak. So how do we break? So for this, you need to understand the basic shapes. So for example, squares, circle, triangles, these are 2D shapes. And 3D, you need to understand how to draw cube. Don't worry, in later sessions, I'll teach you how to draw cubes, a cylinder, cone, sphere. And so these are the main basic 3D volumes, which are mostly used in product drawing or industrial drawing, or even for composition in interior, kind of almost everything. Even in human figure drawing, all these basic volumes are used. Okay, so don't worry about it. I'll show you the process of how to break down complex form into simple form when we are drawing something, either from observation or either from memory. Okay. So another question is that Modi is asking, sir, how to practice perspective. Okay, so perspective, again, Modi, I'll be covering this topic specifically, and I think next section is about perspective. So you'll get a lot of clarity into how to draw perspective, what you need, as I showed the anatomy of ellipse, what are the things you need to keep in mind. Similarly मैं perspective का भी बताऊंगा कि perspective में आप जब draw करते हो तो आपको क्या क्या चीज ध्यान रखने की जरूरत है, तो आप कभी भी उसमें confuse नहीं होगे. Okay, so Snehashi says that okay, which shapes should you practice daily? Okay, so the shapes in 2D shapes, I'll say that practice circle, ellipse and square and rectangle. ये सबसे ज्यादा बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट, कि इसी से आप उसके 3D वॉल्यूम, रेस्पेक्टिव 3D वॉल्यूम्स बनेंगे. तो आप ये उसको जरूर, उसको रोज प्रैक्टिस करना आप उसको. तो फ्री हैंड, ड्रॉ फ्री हैंड. ओके, डोंट यूज एनी स्केल और रूलर, ड्रॉ फ्री हैंड. Okay, so Mudala says how to maintain proportions while drawing from by observing. Okay, so another good question. So proportions basically is if you have an object in front of you and you divide it into some proportions, like into thirds or into quarters. तो जैसे एग्जांपल के लिए, जैसे आपका ये फोन, जैसे ये फोन है, अगर ये फोन की डायमेंशन को मुझे इसको डिवाइड करना है तो आई कैन डिवाइड इट इन थर्ड. सो एक ये थर्ड हो गया, एक ये थर्ड हो गया. सो ये these 3 thirds. We know that this shape is rectangular. What I did is I just divided into thirds. Okay, so this is your proportion. तो ये आपका रेफरेंस हो जाता है. तो जब आप इसको ड्रॉ करोगे देख के, तो आप जैसे आप ऑड नंबर ऑफ सेक्शंस में उसको डिवाइड कर सकते हो या इवन नंबर में कर सकते हो, विच एवर सूट्स यू, विच एवर यू आर कंफर्टेबल विद. दैट्स हाउ यू ड्रॉ, हाउ यू लाइक make proportions or draw observation proportions from observation. Okay, so Xavier says that any exercise to master object drawing. So it's basically just the fundamentals. It's just basically the fundamentals. There's nothing much. बहुत ऐसा कुछ fancy चीज मैं नहीं बताऊंगा कि ये करना है आपको. बस आप fundamentals को practice करते रहो. और जब आप draw करते हो कोई object ना, उसको जो visual information है, जैसे कि इसका shape क्या है, अगर इसमें ऐसे कोई डिटेल्स हैं, यहाँ पर आपका शार्प कॉर्नर नहीं है, इस पे इज अ राउंड, यहाँ पर राउंड है. तो ऐसी जब डिटेल्स है, ये विजुअल इंफॉर्मेशन है. तो ये इंफॉर्मेशन जब आप देख रहे हो ड्रॉ करके, तो इसको आप याद रखो, मेमोराइज करो. तो यू नीड टू बिल्ड अ मसल मेमोरी so that when you draw from observation, you exactly know what detail is where, what shape you are drawing. And मैं डिटेल में आने वाले सेशन में बताऊंगा कैसे एक ड्राइंग अप्रोच क्या होता है. So don't worry about it. I'll explain the each and every process. Okay, so Anupam says how to understand anatomy of an object by observation. The same thing what I just mentioned here just a while ago. Amita says how do we identify what is drawn in 1-point perspective or 2-point perspective? Okay, good questions, Amita. Just be patient. I'll explain this in next class when you talk about perspective. So how do we know that what we are drawing is in 1-point or 2-point perspective? मैं पूरा basic principles से बताऊंगा. Don't worry about it. Okay, so you'll understand really. Okay. Avishka says that how to improve proportion. So I just mentioned, Avishka, how to improve proportion. You just need to divide that dimension, mostly the length and height. Mostly we divide the proportion of the length into odd number of proportions or even number of proportions. Okay, so don't worry about it. मैं ये सब सारा आगे बताऊंगा इस पे चीज में. Okay, so guys, thank you. So that's the end of the session, and we'll continue with in next classes. And all the questions which you have asked today, I'll definitely cover in upcoming sessions. So don't worry about it. Thank you, and have a nice evening. Bye.